So recently I received a letter from a man named Victor, not his real name, about my thoughts on creativity and burnout and what he should do in a situation where he feels like he just doesn't have the passion to play flute anymore. A little bit about him. I'll put the full letter that he wrote me below this video so that you can see the full thing that he asks and learn a little bit more about his situation. But the crux here is that he is a music student in Bucharest, Romania, at the conservatoire there, and is studying flute pedagogy. He has recently bought a new flute, but it's sitting in its case where he said it's been sitting for a while. But what really is going on is that he feels like he knows he can play the flute. He wants to play it, but he's really struggling to engage with his musicianship. So what I did is I recorded a very quick 4.5-5 minute video for him on my initial thoughts on this issue, about what he might potentially reconsider or gain from maybe a new perspective on the creative process for flute playing. So I wanted to say in response to Victor that, first of all, I think that having a little bit of resistance to the flute and the instrument or any art, whether you are an instrumentalist like yourself or a painter, is completely normal. And the reason I say that is because I think it's easy for anyone to beat themselves up about not wanting to show up every single day to their craft. But I think the crux of the matter here is really knowing that creativity is very much a process of ebb and flow. And what I mean by that is, I think that in at least my artistic life, I go through huge surges of major creativity where I am just on fire with my flute playing and showing up every day and just really, really feeling abundant in my creativity, I guess I should say. Whereas other times I get in a dip where I feel like, oh, the last thing I want to do is go pull out my flute, and I really have to force myself sometimes in those days to do that. But I think it's like that in anything that we commit ourselves to. So that's the first thing I wanted to say, Victor, is that is a completely normal part of the artistic process, is to be in these ebbs and flows and to deal with that. Now, I think if it's happening for a long time, I think the other thing that you have to ask and to even think about is whether you want to play the flute. And I know that sounds quite harsh, especially since you have probably committed yourself to doing this degree. You've chosen pedagogy specifically. But let me explain a little bit. So the thing about doing a craft, an art, whether, like I said, you're an artist, a painter, a sculptor, a writer, or even a chef, is that inherently we choose to do those things as a career. I think that it's very rare that somebody is forcing us to do this life path. And I guess what I wanted to say is that the world will not stop if you decide the flute is not for you. The world will still go on. The sun will still set and it will still rise. And you won't be less of a person if you decide the flute isn't for you. Now, the reason I say that is because there was a time when I really heavily identified myself as a flute player only. Like, my whole life revolved around my flute playing. Now, I've written extensively about that on my blog, and I've talked about that a lot. But I think there comes a point where we have to divide ourselves from our art. And I know in an age where everyone says art is in your blood and we create from the soul, and yes, but I also think that we aren't just flute players. We aren't just an artist. We're so much more. We're a whole being. And that artistic side is an expression of our whole being. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, well, I wonder if you could explore a little bit about your reasons for playing flute. And if there's that resistance to opening the case, and if there's that resistance to wanting to get out the flute, there might be a lot of work to do in terms of what is associated with the flute playing. Is there a lot of guilt hanging over the not wanting to practice? Is there a little bit of maybe shame for, I don't know, not feeling good enough? Maybe self-critique, self-doubt. All these things that come inherently with our art sometimes that have been attached from our past experiences might need to be looked at and released with a really good teacher. Finding someone to really rebirth your craft, as I would speak. But along with that, if you decide that, yes, you do want to be a flute player, that you are very much in an ebb, is to think about maybe finding ways that you could bring more joy into your playing when you do show up to your flute and when you're ready to show up to your flute. So by that I mean wondering if there's a certain style of music that you might want to explore, or as a teacher you might want to specialize in. I'm thinking more along the lines of really finding what lights your fire and committing to that for a while and seeing if that seems to solve the problem. Now, I will continue to write so many more ideas I have for you, Victor, on this, but I wanted you to say that, look, you're not alone. It's a common thing. And if you were here and we were having a cup of coffee, I would have probably said those same things to you. And of course, found out more about what you're going through. But listen, I wish you all the best and a lot of success in your music career or any other career you decide, because let's face it, I really think that the heavens above and the universe will support you in whatever you decide to do. Just because you've been supported in your flute playing in the past doesn't mean that you won't be supported if you decide it's not for you. Bye.